Hello, everyone. Welcome to our next edition of Rebecca and Rebecca, where we love books. I'm Rebecca Reed, and this is my friend and cohort, Rebecca Yager. How you doing, Rebecca?
Doing great. Hi, Rebecca.
Oh,
Oh, is Ziva
Ziva,
there, ready to
Ziva
join us
joined.
on our
Yeah,
review?
Ziva
Hello,
joined.
Ziva. You just had to come say hi.
Yeah.
She wanted to
She's
get
like,
in on the book
"Yeah,
review. Yeah.
of course. Did you read it too? Hmm? Did you read it? No, she didn't read it. Okay, she
Okay.
has nothing to say. Anyway, welcome to our interview, not interview. That's not what we're doing. We're doing a review.
We're
Sorry.
reviewing.
I don't know. We're doing a review. And it's of An Uncertain Road by Abbey Downey. And I do stop, Ziva. She's knocking stuff off my desk. Ziva, stop. You can't do that. No.
She really wants to participate today.
Wants to
If you didn't
participate.
catch that, we are reviewing An Uncertain Road by Abbey Downey. Say it
Sorry.
again. It's worth saying again. It's worth saying.
Yeah, it is.
So, you ready to read all about it, or do you want me to read all
I
about
am
it?
trying to get there. Just a moment. There we go. I found it. Okay, so I will let you know a little bit about the book. An Uncertain Road is the first book in the Adventurous Heart series, and it's about a female auto racer and a mechanic determined to walk away from the sport and the race of a lifetime. When young widow Flora Montfort returns to America, she's determined to use her training in auto racing to support herself and her French mother in law, even if female drivers are rare in 1905. So when the owner of a successful sporting goods store hires her to drive in the Glidden Tour, a 10-day race through New England, she jumps at the opportunity. Jensen Gable must be convinced that joining the team as the ride-along mechanic is worth the risk. After losing his best friend in a tragic racing accident, Jensen has vowed never to participate in the sport again. But his promise to protect that friend's younger brother, also on the tour, is the only thing that outweighs his fear of the dangers. As they race through New England, Flora and Jensen find common ground that ignites their interest in each other, but doubts and old enemies come between them. Hazardous road conditions, meddling locals, and competitors who will stop at nothing to win, they all conspire to prevent Flora and Jensen from reaching the finish line. As the race of a lifetime heats up, one question rises above all others. Can their love find the road that leads to forever?
Right. Well,
Hmm.
for any of those, even with that sigh, who thinks this is a mushy romance, there is romance, yes, but the romance really takes a long time to develop. This story, we're talking, it's the turn of the century. It's 1905, and it's a female race driver.
Yeah,
And I think kudos to Abby Downey for thinking of that character right there.
I know. I really I like this idea. I'm a fan. I have similar uh, ideas of my own, but not at all the same. No cars, no cars in mine. So, uh, but that's
Horses,
that she has a
maybe?
horses, of course, horses. But she loves, she loves this topic, and I've talked to her about it. Abby's a friend of mine, and we've spoken about this before. And she really wanted to showcase women in unusual roles, and she's done a fantastic job in this story because women were shunned in a lot of places. Not only were they not welcome, but they were actually barred from racing in many places. And so the fact that this character is modeled after a true actual person, by the way. Um, so this is not. I mean, it's an embellished story, but the person that the real person. There was an actual female driver who drove in this particular race in this time period. So it's not that it's impossible. It did happen. It just not with this particular story. So, yeah, I like it a lot because of that. But I also like the fact that this woman is not someone you're going to go to say anything demeaning to without her standing up for herself. She's very sassy. She has and she's not rude sassy. Like, she's not going out and like trying to create a stir or about her being a woman. It's not about that. She just wants to do what she enjoys and
Mhm.
and she also doesn't have a lot of other marketable skills. And so this is the thing she knows how to do. This is how she's going to make a living. And she has a person to support. It's not just about her. She's trying to support her mother-in-law. Her husband, her first husband, was killed. And so she's a widow. She's supporting her mother-in-law. She has very altruistic reasons for wanting to do this.
Mm.
And so it's not about like making a name for herself or being the first or woman in the sport or anything like that. It's
Mhm.
truly about, this is how I have to survive. I have to put food on the table. I have to provide for my mother-in-law and myself a home. This is how I'm going to do it.
Right.
And she's trying to figure out how that's going to work.
Yeah, and she's incredibly strong, but she's not, like you said, trying to defy conventional norms. This is what she loves. She likes
Mhm.
cars and she likes racing, and she was able to do it. She married a French husband, and she was able to do that in France, but to come back to the United States, and she's back for her brother's wedding, actually,
Mhm.
and settling back in the U.S. She needs to be back near family, and but anyway, she's just trying to do what she loves. It's pretty simple
And she's good.
goal, and
That's
she's
the
good.
other thing too.
Yeah.
She's talented. Her and her husband taught her to drive, taught her all about the car and the engines and all the mechanical stuff. It's not just that she drives, she actually knows a lot about the other parts of racing too, and how to set the car up and, all those things that, um, were pretty much reserved for men. And she wouldn't have learned all these things if her husband hadn't wanted her
Right.
to help because this was his role when they were in France. That's what he did. So, um, yeah, she's what more than meets the eye, much more than meets the eye.
Yeah.
And, but she's had a lot of tragedies happen. Her husband, was killed in an auto wreck as well. Like, so she could have been scared away from the sport, but
Mhm.
she has reasons, like she needs money, and this is one way to get it. Um, because
Um,
the
what choice
hero.
does she have? I mean, it's
Yeah,
what she
right, she
does.
doesn't. And the hero, though, he reacts differently to the same basic thing, right?
Mhm.
He had a friend killed in an auto accident. He, instead of, um, still trying to make a living in the sport, he completely shuns it. He's decides to never have anything to do with it anymore, and he's
Mm.
completely the opposite. Jensen is his name, and Flora is the heroine, and Jensen and Flora couldn't be more different in on surface.
Right.
Deep
Right.
down, they're very similar, but they've reacted to these tragedies in their lives in completely different ways.
Completely opposite
And
ways, and they are at cross purposes no matter what they do. They're
yes,
opposites.
completely. And it's funny because Jensen is very much the worrywart. You think of the mother who doesn't want her children to go out and,
Mhm.
hurt themselves or, skin a knee or anything. Jensen is that person. He's all about safety and, it's everything is about safety, about, how fast she's allowed to go, how which routes to take and, all of those things. And he is there. That's his reason for being there, is to keep things safe.
Right. Right.
So,
Well, he agrees to ride along because he's working for the Harrison Sporting Goods store. His best friend was the one that was killed, but he's still very close to the family and wants to stay close to the family. But he's just been in the sporting goods thing, and yet Mr. Harrison wants to expand it to this racing for this big race. To do that. And then the other Harrison's son and his wife want to ride along in the race as part of their honeymoon trip. And
yeah.
that was interesting that, okay, you have passengers when even though it's a 10-day race, it's not the Indy 500, but still, you're not used to having passengers. Um, during a race. So that is the reason he's compelled, because he wants to keep the other Harrison son safe.
Right.
His safety first.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, it's definitely a different view of auto racing, and this is if you
mm,
are a fan of racing anyway, this would be fascinating for you to see like the origins of the sport, and maybe everybody that's a fan of racing knows these things already, but I certainly didn't. And
right.
I was fascinated by the way it started, and the things that were how it was begun, how it began. And it was very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Um and they travel through New England, so you get to see like Boston in the early 1900s and other places that you'll recognize, as they travel through them. And I thought there was one particular racing part that I thought was so interesting because you see it like on commercials for like four-wheel drive vehicles where they drove up this mountain side and it was a race to the top, which was something that Jensen was completely against doing because it wasn't safe. But by
And
this time,
it was an optional part of the race. It
it
was
wasn't.
something they
Yeah, it
did for
wasn't
that.
required. Yeah.
For
So.
that area. But that's true. Abby in her notes at the end says that was a true race that they
Yeah.
did. So this is a lot of this is factual too,
Hmm.
as they're going from Philadelphia to New York, which New York is where the race actually started. But they
Yeah,
lived
it's
in,
like a round.
and
It's a
then
round trip.
through,
They go out and then they come back. So
yeah,
yeah,
um,
yeah,
through New England and back. So it's really interesting to see. So it's not even just this feminist story. It's
hmm,
historically fun to
hmm,
have this character of Flora and the race car driver, and then Jensen, like you said, is almost the opposite. He's the hovering mother who wants everyone safe, and helicopter mom,
yeah,
and
yeah,
stuff that agrees to
yeah.
go on as the ride along mechanic. It's interesting to me. They have a driver and a ride along mechanic and
I know
passenger.
that part was interesting too. The how like all of it came about, and she talks very knowledgeably about all the different kinds of cars and how they work. And so I kudos to Abby with all the research she had done. It was, I mean, historical is always that way, right? The people who write historical are they're research gurus because they have to know all the details, and that's good for them and good for us
Well,
as
and
readers.
it is
So
true. You have to know the details, but you can't overwhelm the reader with the details. You got
mhm,
to give the reader just enough to fire our imaginations to get a feel and a picture of where they are and what they're doing and things like that without getting lost in minutia where you lose the pace of the story. And so
mhm.
Abby does that well. She keeps things moving even as you're learning
And
about
for
this.
those who are very, the romance fans out there, there's a lot of romance, but it's not ooey gooey romance. It's very, it's a very interesting and very kind of slow.
It's
It's
a
a very slow burn
slow burn.
type of
Yes.
romance, very slow burn, but it's always simmering. There's always
Yes.
there's always a little romance simmering under there, right? It's not just, okay, we're doing the race. Okay, we're gonna do the romance. No, it's very entwined. And she does a great job of keeping that thread like always right there. It's like, it's kind of like, I don't know, the tectonic plates of the earth, right? You've got how they just sort of erupt sometimes. And like sometimes the romance will just kind of like poke through and then it'll kind of just float down here underneath again for a little while, and it's always there, but it's not, like, always in your face and,
Well, I was
I
thinking
think
of
you really
more,
like my descriptions, don't you?
but no, the simmering and the slow burn I liked, but I was more thinking of the push pull because initially Jensen and Flora are at opposite
Oh,
things.
yeah.
She's ready to go race, and he's like, no, we got to be safe. And I don't even want to go on this race, but I will for the family I work
Yeah,
for. And so they're kind of playing tug of war too. So that could be tectonic plates, but
yeah, I
it's a
guess
little
so.
bit of tug of war, but then the romance starts to simmer in between that. But then they it takes them a while to really work
Well,
through it.
they both have very deep past issues, that as we mentioned already, they deal with them quite differently, and how it looks on the surface is quite different.
Mhm.
But they both have open wounds that need to be
Yeah,
closed
yeah,
before the romance can really
yeah.
flare up. They're both interested, but they both keep denying it because of all these wounds that they have. And so
Mhm,
it really is, um,
mhm,
that they have to deal with each with their own pass before they can,
mhm,
and before they can actually move forward. And I mean, this is very typical with fiction, that we have this type of thing. But
mhm.
Abby does a really good job of just kind of holding it off, like the whole thing, and it doesn't feel like she's stalling. The story is moving.
Oh, no, the story moves.
Story is moving the whole
Yes.
time, and yet you still get this sense of, like, I can't they want to move on, but they can't move on,
Yeah.
and things just happen, and they kind of they'll jerk forward a little bit, and then they'll pull back, and it's a
Slam
very
on the
well done, like
brakes.
that push-pull that you mentioned. That's very she does that with an art. She
Mhm.
has that down to a science, because she's got it. It's very well done, that part of it. Um,
Well,
so
there's a
that's
lot.
something that you could, I mean, I guess if you wanted to study that particular
Mm,
method, this would be a good story for that,
mhm.
because she's got it figured out.
It's good. It's the opposites attract thing, so it does take a while. You can't just throw them together and,
Mhm.
they're madly in love. And again, we're talking about a 10-day race, auto racing, so there's action, there's a villain, a little bit of a bad guy in there to keep things interesting, which helps throw them together, but it also causes a few arguments between them, between Flora and Jensen, as they deal with the
Yeah,
bad guy.
and there's
So,
a lot of tension between Jensen and the bad guy already before, and then
they have
there's a lot
history.
of things added to it that make it more difficult even.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
So,
there's plenty of opposition,
mhm,
from on all sides, for all the different, goals in the story, and the different people's goals, and the different, the story goal itself, and, just even winning the race is one thing, but then are they gonna get together? There's a lot of opposition there, and it really, um it feels very organic too. It's not like just contrived. It's very well, the all the things flow very nicely. I did like, how she put in there too, just in general, the public's perception of automobiles was interesting, um,
yes,
too.
yes.
She really layers that in there,
Mhm,
because we're so used to a society where automobiles are, you have to have one. I mean,
mhm,
in the American, most people have an automobile. I mean, there's a few people, I'm sure, in bigger cities maybe, that do not, but for the most part, I mean, where I live in rural Indiana, if you don't have an automobile, you don't go anywhere. I mean, we don't
mhm,
have public transportation. There's no
mhm.
way else to get anywhere.
Yeah.
So the difference in the attitude of our time versus the 1905 attitude on automobiles was very interesting too, and how she fit that in there and showed it
Mhm,
in a lot of different ways, a lot of different things that happened throughout the race, and how the race was helping versus and or hurting that perception too
right,
of automobiles. So
right, right. No, that was interesting because it was still a new phenomena at that time, and then especially these races and stuff.
mhm,
So yeah, kind of a fun bits of history. Again, she does a good job of sprinkling that in without stopping the story and disrupting the pacing, either with the mechanics of how the cars run, or with the perception of automobiles, or even the countryside and where they're going on the race. You get the flavor of everything, and she mixes it all together really well, and it comes out just great, but nothing ever stops the flow of the book, and that's critical and sometimes difficult to do. And to me, being kind of a fascinating topic that you would want to get Wonder how far in she went with her research. I can't wait to ask her.
I know. That'll be fun to find out.
To do that. So yeah, enjoyable, kind of a fun book. It is a romance, but again, it's a slow burn romance, and not, as you say, not too ooey gooey. It takes them a while, but they got to deal with a lot of their past issues, and so that makes them gives the characters a little more depth and a little more. There's stuff they're trying to work through, and it's not easy stuff. And so that's real. Good. So it's also worth, like you mentioned before, studying as an author if you're trying to study different portions of the book and how the slow burn. Push-pull, this is a good one to do. And again, for historical, how to sprinkle in those details without overwhelming the reader with details.
True.
So, yeah.
Yeah,
so
very good. I enjoyed it a lot. I would definitely recommend it if you're, if you're looking for something new. This is a good one. And there's going to be it's a series. So, but the characters are not like it's a standalone within a series. The series is related by all of the women in this series have interesting jobs and things like that. So it's related that way. So you don't have to like wait for the other ones to come out to get this one because it's not gonna hurt you to read it because you're not gonna be like left on a cliffhanger or anything.
Yeah.
There's nothing like, at the end that you're gonna be like, gosh darn it, I wish that other book was out now. It's done in its own book, its own story.
Well, you may want the next book because she is writing such fun characters and intriguing premises, so you're going to be ready for the next one. Again, this was An Uncertain Road by Abbey Downey. And oh gosh, can't wait to talk to her. And I said, you know her. So
yes, she's fantastic. She's a lovely person, and she's written, her historical is her thing, so she's gonna tell us all kinds of good stuff about how she figures all this information out. But yeah, we're gonna interview her. That'll be our next toward the end of June here. We'll have that episode out. And then what do we have to look forward to next
July? We have A Run at Love with Tony Shiloh. And it's a contemporary romance. So we're going to switch from our historical days back into contemporary. So we will be reading A Run at Love by Tony Shiloh for July. So,
yay. Looking forward to that too.
Yeah. So we got lots of good stuff coming up. You can check our website at rebeccaandrebecca.com, by the way, to see what we have coming up, and look for our Instagram page, which is Rebecca and Rebecca Reviews, and we have a Facebook page, also Rebecca and Rebecca Reviews. So we're around.
Yeah, you can find us, and what was I going to say? I don't know.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel and listen to us on Spotify.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. We have video and audio. That's what I was gonna say. So it's entirely up to you what flavor you prefer. If you like to watch or listen or whatever, we have all of that available. So look for us, and we hope that you send us some comments and subscribe and all of those good things, because we don't want to miss what we have coming up. So thanks a lot for being here. We appreciate it. And we'll look forward to seeing you the next time. Bye.
Bye.